Hello, thank you for joining us today. Recently, I went to Brazil and I met an insider there that had some very interesting information. The person who introduced me to this new insider was Fabio Santos, and I thought it would be a good idea to introduce him to Dr. Salla. I had been sharing information with Dr. Salla for a little while, and he was investigating on his own, and he was really interested in talking to Fabio, and they found a lot of correlations with my testimony and other testimony out there. So enjoy this video.
I'm here with Fabio Borges de Santos, co-author of the book Planetary Intervention, where he talks about the experiences of a super soldier from Brazil and his trainings and his worldwide experiences. So, welcome, Fabio. I'm glad you could come here and talk about your book.
Thank you, Dr. Salla. Thank you for the invitation and for the interest in the book.
Yes, so tell us, how did you meet the co-author that uses the pseudonym Daniel?
Okay, we used to have a friend in common, a Brazilian friend that he used to work for the law enforcement. And he introduced me to the co-author and to the character that we named in the book, Daniel, that we based the story in. When I heard his story for the first time, I was really impressed about the details. He was telling me his experience in some global army, some global elites that even encountered some extraterrestrials on Earth. So it was kind of the first time that I heard about someone encountering extraterrestrials on Earth, because we are used to hear some stories about off-planet operations or some portals to other dimensions, but to encounter in a military way extraterrestrials on Earth, so it caught my attention. So I started to chat with him. We chat for over a month every night. We spent the whole night talking about his experiences. And what caught my attention was the level of detail that he was telling me. He was telling me locations. He was telling me some specific about operations and some specific about guns and vehicles, military vehicles that I used to take note and then research afterwards, because I never heard about them. So I did a lot of research on that, and I tried to check some facts, because he told me a lot about some the Gulf War, about the Syrian War, about some wars that were going on in the 90s and early 2000s. And I did my research, and I saw that a lot of things check out. So we went deep on it, but we met through a common friend that we used to have, and we went from that.
So can you tell us a little bit about his story? I mean, he served in the regular Brazilian army as a conscript for a couple of years, and then he didn't get to join the regular army, which was his plan. He went home, and then he got recruited for this super soldier program. Why don't you tell us how that, what happened there?
Yes, that is what happened, and that is I think the first chapter of the book. When we tell his story, he served for a year in the Brazilian army, right in the capital of Brazil, Brasilia, in the center of the country, and he was dismissed after this year. And in the book, we mentioned some reasons for that. There was a lot of politics going on inside the place that he was serving. So basically, the friends of the lieutenants and the people that were choosing who was going to keep serving or not were chosen, and he was dismissed, and he was very sad about that, and a little bit. It was a traumatizing experience for him, because since he was a kid, he was always dreaming about being in the military. He used to play with imaginary guns when he was a child. It's a very interesting story, how his psyche was built, and how was his childhood. And then when he was a teenager, he was really focused. He had this psychological profile to be a soldier, to work in the army. Was when kids want to be, I don't know, firemen or doctors or lawyers, he always wanted to be in the army. That is a really interesting thing in his story. And when he got there, he was one of the best. He was on the top 3 for the year that he served. And due to politics, he was not chosen to continue to serve, and he was really sad. And on this, there's a dismissal ceremony, if we can say that, when people stop serving. And after this ceremony, he was, he got nowhere to go but his parents' house. He was 19 at the time. And a guy came out of nowhere when he was walking to catch the bus. And he said, hey, do you want to continue to serve? Do you want to continue to be a military? And he said, sure. And the guy gave him a phone and said, so you call me and we get into the details. And he found that a little bit strange, because that's not how the military goes, right? That's not how things are handled. He went back home, and he was very sad, and it passed, I think it was 3 months before he called the guy. He finally called the guy, and the guy said, hey, can we meet tomorrow? And then he met the guy, and right away he was taken to a military base, and then he signed the papers, and he was already flying to a mission. He got no idea what he was getting into. He was just driven by the idea of going back to be a military and do what he loved most. So that's how it happens, how he entered in this super soldier program, or I don't know, global elite military.
So when he was recruited into this covert unit after his 1 year compulsory military service, what was unusual about the training? You know, what separated the training he received for this covert super soldier program from, say, regular military training?
Well, at the beginning, he thought that it was really special forces for a global military. Before he entered this program, he had no idea there was any kind of global military going on. But the early trainings, it was very similar to what he had in the military facility for the first year. So physical training. And then he had some parachuting. He went to the jungle, to the Amazon, to have the jungle training. It's really hard. I think it's one of the best in the world in Brazil. Survival training, and he had lots of kinds of training inside Brazil first, and then he was taken outside Brazil to have this desert training, or ice training on ice. So training on lots of different weather, lots of different situations. At that point, he had no idea what to expect. He just thought, hey, this is a really special unit. This is a really special training because I'm training in different situations. I need to be ready for different situations. But at the end of around the end of the first year of training, there was this time that he was first introduced to a kind of mental training, a psychological training. And that was the first time that he had the experience of seeing, at that time, a holographic extraterrestrial being. So he went to a military facility, and they put him in a kind of hologram or virtual, like when you use the virtual glasses. And this simulation, he saw for the first time a reptilian. Of course, holographic reptilian, but it was a perfect copy of the real one. So some soldiers, they just freak out. They couldn't do it, and they couldn't pass the psychological training, because in this simulation you have to confront this being, and this being confronted you. So it was very traumatic for the soldiers. And fortunately, he went through. But that was the first time that he thought, hey, there's something different here, because his superiors, they never told him, hey, you're going to be on this mission or that mission, or that's what we do or that's what we don't do. They are treated like machines. They're treated like well, I think I never been to the military, but I think that's pretty much the way it goes. The soldiers are not told what the mission is until the mission is about to happen, right? When they get the briefing. So that's pretty much what he told me. He was never told on training what he was training to, what could he expect. He never had this information. So the first time that he encountered a training that was a little bit different from what he was expecting inside, because he was never told to expect anything, was in this hollow training with the reptilian. It was the first time that he encountered that. And of course, he never asked a thing after that, until he finally went to a mission. When he was briefed, he and the team was briefed that the encounter with this reptilian being was imminent.
So, I mean, he was first acclimated to the idea of reptilian extraterrestrial life, and then in one of his first missions, he actually had an encounter with a reptilian. So why don't you kind of like explain what it was that his super soldier unit was being trained for in terms of like extraterrestrial combat, that was really the major thrust of their training, and a lot of their missions was to seek out, engage, and fight with, if necessary, with these extraterrestrials.
Was one of the types of missions that he had was combat with extraterrestrials. The most of the time, they were serving as a kind of missions to manipulate in one way or the other the wars that were going on. For instance, when his unit went to Iraq, he was doing some specific missions for both sides, not for just one side, not just for the Allies or for the US, but for the US and the Iraqis. So it depends on I don't know, whoever was driving his missions, or I don't know, we can say that was manipulated by the Cabal or by the secret government. Anyways, he was doing missions for both sides, and he never knew. He knew about the missions 1 day or 2 days before the actual mission. So he fought in the Iraq War, right beside the UN, right beside the US, but right beside the Iraqis as well. So that was, and we have examples for the same thing going on with the Syrian war and some other wars that were going on in Africa at that time. So we had a couple of examples in the book. And on the next book, we are bringing more examples of that as well. There was the most missions were manipulating wars. The second type of missions were technology recovery. So ancient technology recovery. So he had a lot of missions in the Middle East to recover ancient technology. And technologies, we are talking about Vimanas or ancient aircrafts, or even portal technology, some technologies that the public has not given any access. So that was the second type of mission that he was most of the time. The third one was a security. security for global leaders to meet extraterrestrials in some special places. So in the book, we have a couple of cases. We are bringing the second book. We are going to bring more of that. So he used to do security. He used to secure the perimeter for the extraterrestrials to meet some Earth leaders. And last but not least, the encounters with extraterrestrials for combat. So it happened. It happened a couple of times, well, more than a couple. It happened a lot. But on the book, we have a couple of examples. The first one with the gray extraterrestrial that they encountered. It was some sort of an accident that they encountered that being, and the being that we have the picture that was published in the book. And I saw your video. You showed the picture for the audience. I think everyone saw that already. That the gray is handling a weapon, and his on his knee on a very, very tall mountain. I think it was, if my memory is not failing, I think it was in the East Europe, somewhere East Europe. Bosnia, yes, thank you. It was in Bosnia. And one thing that it's not in the book, and Daniel told me, is that that mountain, it doesn't exist anymore. After what happened there, some planes came and they threw some bombs in that mountain. So that mountain doesn't exist anymore. So no proof of what happened. That's the mode of operation. So there's this encounter. That was one of the first missions that Daniel did. And another important mission was in the border of Colombia with Venezuela in South America, when they finally encountered a reptilian. It was his first time seeing the very same reptilian that he saw in the simulation. He saw in the combat. So they were briefed that it was about to happen, because the mission was to see what the reptilians were doing inside the cave. So it was just a go there and see what's going on and come back. But unfortunately, they were seen by the reptilians, and there was this exchange of fire. And we described the kind of weapons that the reptilians used, and the armor that they have. They are not naked, or we think that they are naked, but they are not naked. They were able to shoot one and kill one of them in this mission. And Daniel was there, and he was very close, and he can describe the reptilian the way he was, and what happened afterwards. So the extraction, this reptilian is sent to somewhere, and they went back home. And one interesting thing about the combats with some extraterrestrials is that the soldiers are given so much information, right? They are giving just the right amount of information they need to go and combat with those beings. So questions about who rescued the corpse, and where are the corpse, and what they did with the corpse, or this thing that it's on the hand of the reptilian, what is it for? So there's so much details that they know. They know just the right amount to be able to go in and come back with them and come back to the base.
Right. So we're talking about a global military that belongs to the deep state or the Cabal, which is separate from the national militaries.
Definitely.
And that they're sent, and sometimes, as you said, their missions might involve doing things for one side or another side in a conflict situation. Other times they go in, seek advanced technologies, provide security. That was the third mission. And then the fourth was, of course, combat with extraterrestrials, engagements. Well, one of the really interesting chapters in the book that I found particularly fascinating was the chapter about Antarctica, where he provided security for some VIPs having a meeting with extraterrestrials. So why don't you tell us about that chapter? What did Daniel experience?
Well, it is one of my favorite chapters as well. I love about every story that he can tell me about Antarctica, and we have a couple more coming for the next book. This one in particular, he did a security to a meeting and in Antarctica that they went a little bit far from what he was expecting. He was really trained on that security, doing the perimeter for the meetings, but it was the first time that he was doing that in Antarctica, and it was the first time that he felt truly fear. And he tells about that, and he's open about that. He said that the one time that I served and that I really felt the fear was this time in Antarctica, because he was doing the perimeter. He was the last one. So the perimeter is done through circles, right? They do a series of circles about a mile from each other. So no one can get close, right? And he was in the inside circle, so the last circle, the one that is closest to the meeting and the being that was coming. So he saw this craft coming from the clouds, and it was huge. It was like a soccer field long. It was really, really big craft, and the craft went down really smooth without any sound. And then this tall white being came from the craft, was like hovering from the ground. He could not see the feet. And when this being came out, this being looked at the guards, and of course Daniel as well, and he did something with his hand, like some movement, some specific movement, and right away everyone got into their knees with like an involuntary movement. They got into their knees and they couldn't move. They could just move the eyes, the eyeball. That's it. And he was really, really afraid. And the guys from this super soldier program, they could speak to each other through the radio, and they'll say, "Hey guys, what's going on? What's going on? Are you guys paralyzed as well?" And everyone, yes, I don't know what's going on. I can just move my mouth and my eyes. And then right away, this being talked to them mentally, said, you don't have to be afraid. Just calm down. It will be soon. It will be over soon. And just chill, basically that. And they were in that same position, paralyzed for over 3 hours. And when the being came back with the meeting with the human, with the Earth human, the being went inside the craft and went away. And when the craft went away, they immediately regained the movement. And but they were not tired. They are not feeling anything, any sword or cramps or anything. They were feeling refreshed. They were feeling great. But the fear was high, of course, because you can. The description that Daniel gave me is that, can you imagine for a military guy, a tough guy that is always in control of the situation, thinking ahead of this situation, to see a being that with one hand movement can paralyze an entire troop? Oh, that really scares me, because if that being wants to do anything with humanity, it is unimaginable. So it was the first time he said, I was really, really afraid.
So that was a very impressive encounter, and that being had some kind of advanced technology or superior consciousness, where a combination of the two was able to just physically incapacitate this troop of super soldiers, providing security for this VIP meeting with that extraterrestrial for 3 hours, that they were just crouching on one knee, immobile. but not harmed in any way. And the being just disappeared, did the meeting, came back and left. And then the whatever technology or whatever consciousness command was used was just lifted. Quite an incredible encounter, that one.
Yes, definitely. And the thing that is very surprising and very notable is that the being with their technology or their mental capacity, they could paralyze the troops, but also the technology that the troops were using, because they use some kind of armor that analyzes their target, right? It's like a helmet, a really tech helmet that could analyze, and they could give so much information about the being. And by the time it happened, they could not move, and they cannot do anything with the technology. The technology was working, but they just had the distance information, and that's it. So it is really interesting. And gladly, one thing that Daniel mentions is that, well, it appears to be a positive extraterrestrial because they were not harmed. That's what he thinks. So he puts this white tall being on the positive sides of extraterrestrials.
Right. Well, with the situations, the book talks a little bit about the combat situations with extraterrestrials and the high casualty rates amongst the super soldiers when they're fighting different groups of extraterrestrials, greys or reptilians. So is there anything you're wanting to say to say about those combat situations with extraterrestrials that they were trained for, and how far back in history they go? You talk, that's not necessarily in the book, but maybe you want to just add, how much of, like the Predator series of books, or films, how much of that is actually based on this kind of reality that Daniel was talking about?
Yeah, one interesting thing is that when he was getting more experience in this super soldier program, he was given some different kinds of missions, because it was never the same troop on a mission. So it was soldiers from all over the world, and the troops, they gather in some places, but it was never the same troop. They were never friends. They didn't know each other's names. They were treated by codes. So I could see your code on your vest, and I can call you 34. I don't know. So they were never friends. And as he was getting more experienced, he was giving some special missions regarding extraterrestrials involved. I personally think was due to his performance on the psychological training on the Hollow thing. So as he was more experienced in those kind of missions, he was given some more information before the missions regarding what was going on, especially on what could happen and who could he encounter. So in one of this study for missions, he was given the access to some technology that is very similar to what Corey told everyone about the smart glasses, with the smart pad, that he could see some things that happens and had access to information like an iPad. But we were talking about the early 90s, right? So there was no iPad or anything related to that at that time. So he was studying some of that technology, some of these smart pads, and he read some things about how old it is for the human race to have those kind of encounters. And one thing that he mentioned that he read, and probably we're going to bring more details on the next book, is that those encounters always happen in the history of Earth, in the history of humanity, with the positive ones and the negative ones. And one thing that he always mentions as well is that the Predator movie, especially the first one, is real, is based on a real story. that happens. And that happens for thousands of years, and it still happens. How that happens? So if you remember, the movie is just a reptilian or insectoid kind of being that hunts Schwarzenegger on that first book, right? On the force. So they pretty much hunt each other on that force. So what Daniel told that he read is that there are some types of reptilians, and it's good to mention, it's not every reptilian is not the same. It's more than 700 types of reptilians, 700 different races of reptilians. So we are talking about a couple that are on Earth, that are living on Earth underground, and they, from time to time, they come to the surface to hunt. So basically, what the kind of treaty that humanity did with them is that, hey, please don't go to our cities to hunt our women and children, or let's make a deal. Because what happened in the past is that they just, from time to time, I don't know, every let's throw a number here, every 10 years a couple of reptilians come to the surface and enter a big city, and then start killing a lot of people, some for food, some for fun, I don't know. So at one point in history, humanity made a deal with those reptilians, say, hey, don't go for our women and children. We are going to fight with you in a secure location. We are going to send men to fight with you. Is that okay with you? And they said, yeah, we don't mind. As far as we can have our fun, as far as we can hunt you, we don't mind. So that's the deal that we are in. And the guys that are sent to fight those reptilians belongs to this special forces, belongs to this super soldier program. So Daniel trained some guys to go to special locations and to have these encounters. So they just hunt for fun. They know they are 10 times stronger than us. They know they're 10 times faster than us. So what we try to do is compensate that difference in technology. So we have really tech armors, and we try to beat them by advancing our technology, but it's not always possible. And one thing that Daniel tells us that to kill a reptilian, it needs at least 7 humans. So for one reptilian that got killed, they killed 7 humans. So it's not a fair trade, I would say. But at least what these super soldiers are proud of is that those reptilians are not coming to the big cities, are not going to the broad population, are not killing women and children. They are just finding the military guys, those super soldiers, based on this treaty.
So that's fascinating, because it tells us that this planetary organization that currently trains super soldiers from different world military and recruits them, that goes back a long, long time. So we're talking deep state, Cabal, Illuminati, whatever name you give it. But it goes back to the kind of pre-firearms age too. And so if that agreement was made, that presumably means that soldiers would, using maybe bow and arrows or swords, initially, say in the 11th century or something, you know, during the time of the Crusades, for example. The Crusades would be a good example. You know, the cannon was just developed, but I don't think they had muskets yet. It was just kind of swords and bows and arrows. So some of those people would have actually gone, and probably the Crusades would have been a great cover for this, you know, because world militaries, you know, especially from Christendom, was sending all these armies to the Middle East, to the Holy Land, for all these fights. So presumably some of those soldiers coming from the Holy Land, or from Christian countries like Richard the Lionheart and so forth, some of these guys could have actually gone to the Middle East, to Israel, Palestine, and actually, you know, their real mission was to fight against extraterrestrials as part of these agreements.
Yes, and we have some historical evidence of thousands of years before even before the Crusades, ancient Egypt. We have Sumeria, so we have the Mayans, and so we have a lot of history proof of some reptilian gods that used to mandate some humans as offers. So we have that. It is science. We have evidence of that in a lot of cultures all over the world of reptilian gods asking for humans. So we can imagine how they fought before. So if it's difficult for us nowadays with all the technology that we have, and we still have a ratio from 7-1, you can imagine, I don't know, 4,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, how the ratio was, right? Probably, I don't know, 1,000-1, or even if we could even think about killing a reptilian back then. So it is interesting and a little bit terrifying to think about that.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of evidence, what was it about Daniel's story that really convinced you that this was real, that this wasn't just fiction, that these were real events that he was describing? What convinced you?
Well, my first thought, my first clue was the level of detail that he was describing things. So whether he was a really excellent actor, and every time he talked to me, he prepared a briefing, or he could write his story and be really, really, really convincing, or whether he was speaking the truth, probably speaking the truth. So he gave me a lot of details. I mean, a lot of details that I can never publish because it's just boring to the regular population. So if we think about locations, or at that location, we have that kind of mountain that has this kind of height. And after this mountain, you have a village that it's like this and like that, and the detail of description. And then as I was talking to him over the phone, I was going on Google Earth and I was Googling things and afterwards researching about wars and hearing some stories that are not commonly spoken on the for the general population, from the Syrian war, from the Iraq war, some details about some specific missions that are not on the spotlight for the media. So I had to research some special small missions in some apparently never heard cities in the outside of the desert in Iraq or Morocco, or some places that I never heard of, or the general population are not used to. And he was giving me so many rich details of how things are there, and how the population is, and where things are placed. So whether this guy is like an amazing actor with high intelligence, and he can have a really high capacity of improvisation as well, because I was asking him questions and he was giving me information. So when he was talking to me about a mission, I was asking specific questions about some things that only someone who was actually there could give me that information. And then there are some tactics I'm pretty sure, Dr. Salla, you know about that. So open questions, closed questions, and then ask the same questions a lot of times in different situations. And so I was coming back to stories from 15 days ago and asking about the same details that he was giving me at that time, that I'm pretty sure that he was not remembering. He had no recollection that we already talked about. So he told me the story again. And then when we met in person, I was asking the same story. So we have a lot of techniques to investigate and to validate stories. And besides that, at that time, back in early 2019, when I was collecting all this information and researching for the book, I started to have contact with some people, because we talked to one. So I'm going to introduce you to someone else. So this someone is from the army. That someone is specialized in the special forces. So I started talking to people who are actually involved in some operations. And for instance, when Daniel used to tell me about some specific guns, for instance, or specific ways of doing things with that gun that it's not common to know, right? There's so much we can research online. So I talked to some military guys, some guys that I used to do it. So without them knowing what I was doing. So I could validate a lot of information just researching for myself with the questioning technique, and also validating with others all over the world, not just in Brazil. Well, of course, for instance, I live in Canada, and I talk to a lot of professionals and in the military and out of the military to validate some information. So whether this guy is a genius, really genius, and he can fool a lot of people, or he was actually there and those things happen.
Now, I know he has provided you some photos. So, in terms of photos, documents, what do you have from him that is also compelling?
There's very little photographic evidence. He was never able to get any picture out of it. It was a very strict way of deleting information and letting the soldiers without any hard evidence. Even after it is written in the book, I put that in the book a little bit. Even after each mission, they went to a chemical procedure that to make the memories a little bit blurry and to forget about what happened, especially about after extraterrestrial encounters. So, so like a parenthesis, while we were talking about one mission, he was recovering some memories. So he was accessing those memories by talking to me. So it was never 100% available. So it was an interesting thing that happened. It was very similar to, I think it was very similar to what happened to Corey in this 20 and Back program with the chemical process that he went through. Coming back to the hard evidence. So the pictures that he had was sent by a couple of former colleagues that he made, but not that he made through his missions. Because through his missions, he never knew what guy was with him. It was just codes. But in his last year as the super soldier, and that's the end of the first book. He went to prison. He went to military prison. He went to a kind of military trial. And while he was in prison before the trial, he spent more than 6 months going through prison to prison. And in those prisons, he could say his name, and he knew the name of his fellow prisoners and also the guards and also the people that were there. So he made a couple of friends at that time. And one of those friends sent him a couple of years ago that picture that is published on the book with the gray, with the gun. There was one of his friends that sent to him, one of the friends that were there in the mission with him, but he just encountered him afterwards while he was in prison. So everything that he has was sent to him by one of his colleagues.
Great. Well, tell us, where can people find the book and buy it? And what are the plans for the second volume?
All right. So it's available on Amazon all over the world. So if you were in the United States, Amazon.com, Planetary Intervention. Well, I have here Planetary Intervention. So you can get it on Amazon in Kindle version, the online version, or the hard copy. If you are in the UK, amazon.co.uk. So in Spain, amazon.es. So your local Amazon, it's available in English, in Portuguese as Intervenção Planetária, or in Spanish, Intervención Planetaria. So you can search on like local Amazon. The second book that I will probably call it Galactic Intervention. I'm writing as we speak. I wrote about 30% of the book. I still have a lot of information to vet and to go through. Probably I'll have it ready by July. Let's say June, July, I'll have it ready. I'm writing in Portuguese, so I have to translate in English afterwards. I think I will have the English version by mid-year. I'll surely let you know. One thing that we did in the first book, and we are doing in the second book, is we know that Daniel's story on the first book is based on someone's true story, right? I built a narrative that it's fit for every audience. So even if you have a relative or a friend that they don't believe in extraterrestrials, or they don't believe in those stories for some reason, they can read as entertainment. So you can relate to it's like a novel. You can relate to the character. You can read as sci-fi. And on the second book, I'm adding some other people's experience, not just the first Daniel experience. So after the book was published, a lot of other insiders came. Some insiders related to the military, some others not related to the military. So we are adding on the second book some interdimensional experience, some dream state experience, very interesting, a little bit more spiritual than the first one. And of course, we still have the first book's Daniel's story to fit on this second one. So we're just detaching a little more the Daniel's story, the character story, from the real people due to several reasons.
And if people want to get in touch with you, Fabio, how do they do that?
Well, they can go to my website, fabsantos.com, fabsantos.com. You can choose English, Portuguese, or Spanish. You can read about my books. I have 3 books published. I'm writing 2 more. 2 of them are in English. So if you want to read them or know about them, we have also on my website the Experience 2020 event that brought Corey Good for the first time in Brazil. And we have Daniel's testimony as well. We have almost an hour and a half of Daniel's presentation. And besides Corey, and we have John DeSouza, we have Trisha Marges from 90 Degree Turns. So we have 16 people presenting on Experience 2020, and 5 of them exclusive in English. So more information on fabsantos.com, fabsantos.com.
Well, thank you, Fabio, and I look forward to learning more. Aloha.
Thank you, Dr. Salla. Thank you very much.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview. It's quite amazing. And actually, this type of content is going to become more and more mainstream very soon. On February 22nd, we hope to make a big announcement about a new project that's going to bring exactly this type of information to the masses. So hit subscribe right now. On February 22nd, you want to be notified when the big announcement comes. Thank you for subscribing and watching the Sphere Being Alliance channel. Thank you. Thank you for watching the Sphere Being Alliance channel. Make sure you click on subscribe and smash the bell to make sure you're receiving all the new content from the Sphere Being Alliance YouTube channel.